Alright, hello, welcome back everybody. PayPal and Patreon are down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. Also the YouTube super whatever buttons. So I'm going to try to do one of these updates around the start of every year as long as I can get actual viable information, which has not always been easy, especially now that many conflicting and even backwards and contradictory numbers are getting thrown around, and especially since a lot of the searching stuff gets run through and regurgitated through AI, like everything else is being forced through, which is the reason why you see these sudden jumps in power consumption in a lot of countries over the last year or two, but that's a subject for a different video. Anyways, the Aral Sea was once a large inland sea, a large body of water of roughly 1 trillion cubic meters or 1,000 cubic kilometers up until around the 60s or so, when the USSR, the Soviet Union, began a large mass irrigation project to divert a bunch of water from the rivers that ran into and fed the Aral Sea in order to develop mass agriculture across the Central Asian republics. And obviously, as the amount of water flowing into the Aral Sea was reduced over time, that caused it to gradually shrink and degrade, and the lower it got, the less it was able to retain. So it began dropping quicker and quicker up until at the lowest points in, I believe the two lowest years were 2008 and 2014, but it might have been 2012. It got as low as both the north and south portions together being somewhere under 10 billion cubic meters left, or less than 1% of its original water volume. However, over the last decade or more, through the later 2010s and now especially, work is picking up into the 2020s. Kazakhstan primarily, although work is finally starting in Uzbekistan as well, but mostly it was Kazakhstan up to this point, has been doing a lot of reworking and retrofitting in various ways of that water diversion aqueduct irrigation system to try to reduce the amount of water diverted from those rivers by a means of remaking the aqueduct or the water channels, as a lot of them really were originally just channels through dirt. So a lot of the water that was channeled out of the river would just get absorbed into the surrounding ground along the way. So they've been remaking a lot of those with actual non-water permeable walls, converting some of them into actual insulated pipelines to thus eliminate water loss via evaporation, and of course, switching over to modern, less water intensive irrigation or field watering systems to reduce the amount of water being requested to be diverted from the river in the first place, all stacking up so that more water can be sent down to flow into the Aral Sea, with the one running through Kazakhstan flowing primarily into the North Aral Sea, and the one flowing through Uzbekistan being the one that flows into the south, which is why everything primarily has been happening in the north so far, as intense efforts have only really just started in Uzbekistan. But putting everything together and jumping past the many different answers that will get spewed at you of various conflicting numbers, at the start of last year, total Aral Sea water volume was up to roughly, or back up to, recovered up to roughly 27 billion cubic meters. The larger part of that, 70 to 80% of that being in the northern portion. Over the course of the past year, over the course of 2025, roughly 3.5 billion cubic meters was additionally recovered. So that would put the grand total up over 30, with the majority of that, a bit over 24 out of that 30 or 31 being primarily in the northern portion. So at the start of last year, it was getting close to 3% of its original water volume. Now it is up and over 3% of its original water volume by a little bit at least. The recovery last year, the amount restored, was less than the year before, and that's primarily due to last year was not as good of a year for rain and snow melt in the region, and that's obviously the one element we can't exactly control to the restoration process. But the important thing is obviously that it is still going up. It is still being recovered, still being restored, and one day, unfortunately, at least 50 plus years from now, the Aral Sea even if not as deep, may at the very least, at surface level, look something like this again, at least cover as much area again. So anyways, that's where it stands as of the moment. Total water volume now back up over 30 billion cubic meters, between 30 and 31, with the majority of that, about 24 or 24 and a half of that, being in the northern portion or the Three Lakes conjoined portion. So I will pray that more rain is received by the region this year than last year. But anyways, that is the end of this one. Thank you everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. There's hundreds of other videos across all kinds of different similar and different subjects you can watch if you want to. PayPal, Patreon, and YouTube, super whatever buttons are down there if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. There's a link to my cat's YouTube channel in the top pinned comment. May God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.